When you're 97 years old, not in a letter, not in a message that might never be read, but in a song you wrote with trembling hands, a quiet heart, and a lifetime of memories, and then hearing that song performed by the very person who changed your life. This isn't just a story about Elvis Presley. This is about a woman who never let go of a dream, even when everyone else had already stopped believing in it. It's about time, music, and the unexplainable way one voice can carry you through decades of love, loss, and hope. So let me ask you something. What would you say to the person who changed your life if you had just one chance? This is the story of Evelyn Thompson, a 97-year-old woman with no fame, no stage, no record deal, just a second-hand piano, a lifelong love of music, and one song that would go on to change everything, not just for her, but for Elvis Presley himself. She wasn't trying to get attention. She wasn't chasing a dream of stardom. She simply had something to give, and she believed, deep in her bones, that it wasn't too late to share it. And it all started with an old piano in a quiet room in Memphis. Evelyn Margaret Thompson was born in 1880s-style poverty, even though her birth certificate said 1880s were long gone. Raised in the shadow of the Great Depression, she grew up knowing that dreams didn't always come with permission. Her parents were tough, life was tougher, and music was her only soft place to land. She wasn't trained, she didn't have fancy lessons, but she had an ear, and more importantly, she had heart. She could sit at a piano and pull melodies out of the silence like magic. She became a school teacher, the kind who brought an old portable record player into class and made sure every child heard Louis Armstrong before they learned algebra. She married her high school sweetheart, James, and together they built a small, happy life. It wasn't glamorous, but it was good. Then James passed away, and the silence in the house became something she couldn't ignore. One day, in 1956, Evelyn was walking past a record store when she heard a voice float through the open door. It wasn't like anything she'd ever heard. Smooth, but raw. Confident, but aching. The song was Heartbreak Hotel. The voice, Elvis Presley. She was 76 years old, and in that moment something strange happened. She didn't feel 76. She didn't feel old or widowed or invisible. She just felt alive. That voice lit a fire she didn't know she still had. While teenagers were swooning and fainting at concerts, Evelyn sat at her piano, playing along by ear. She bought every album, attended 3 concerts, once in Memphis, once in Vegas, and once again back home just a year before Elvis passed. She didn't scream. She didn't take photos. She just listened. Because to Evelyn, Elvis wasn't a celebrity. He was a companion. When life was hard, she'd put on his music and cry. When things were good, she'd hum along while baking pies for the church social. And when she felt completely alone, she'd press her ear to the radio like a child, just waiting for that voice to come back on. She never met him, never wrote a fan letter, but for 20 years, his voice had been her steady friend. As the years rolled on, Evelyn kept playing piano, even when her fingers stiffened with arthritis, even when her eyes couldn't read sheet music anymore. Music stayed with her like breath, and then one day, out of nowhere, an idea whispered its way into her mind. She would write him a song, not because she thought he'd ever hear it, not because she needed recognition, but because after all these years of Elvis giving her joy, she felt it was time to return the favor. No love story, no rock and roll anthem, just a simple melody with the weight of a lifetime behind it. At 97, most people are slowing down. Evelyn? She was writing a song. Her fingers were swollen, stiff with arthritis. The same hands that had played piano for nearly a century now trembled just lifting a teacup. But when she sat down at the keys, something shifted. The pain didn't vanish, but it stepped aside. Every morning, she'd shuffle to her old upright piano, the one James had bought her for their 10th anniversary. She'd stretch her fingers, take a breath, and press into the keys with quiet determination. It was slow work, one note at a time, one line at a time. But every word she wrote carried 97 years of joy, grief, and everything in between. Evelyn didn't tell many people about the song, not at first, but she did tell her granddaughter, Sarah. Now, Sarah was a far cry from her grandmother, a sharp, no-nonsense marketing executive in her 30s, blazer, laptop, deadlines. She loved Evelyn, fiercely. But when her grandmother told her with a completely straight face, "I'm writing a song for Elvis," Sarah didn't know whether to laugh or worry. Grandma, Elvis passed away almost 50 years ago. I know, Evelyn said, smiling. But I'm still writing it. Doesn't mean he won't hear it. Sarah tried to be gentle. I mean, that's sweet, but do you really think… Evelyn stopped her with a look, not stern, just sure. People stop dreaming, not because they grow old. They grow old because they stop dreaming. That line shut Sarah up and made her think. The next day, Sarah brought over a USB microphone and her old laptop. She cleared a corner of Evelyn's living room and said, "Okay, if we're doing this, let's do it right." Evelyn smiled like she'd been waiting for this moment. Together, they recorded the song in that tiny room. No fancy equipment, just Evelyn's weathered piano, her voice, still surprisingly strong, and the quiet crackle of the past. The song was called Still Dreaming. The opening line? I've seen nearly 100 years go by, watched dreams rise up, and dreams say goodbye. Then came the chorus. Simple, soft, but powerful. Still dreaming, still believing that music heals what words cannot say. Still dreaming, still believing tomorrow's just a song away. Sarah didn't expect to cry, but she did, quietly, while Evelyn played. She wasn't just hearing a song. She was hearing her grandmother's whole life, sung back to her. That night, they burned the recording to a CD, printed a letter, folded it all carefully into an envelope, and sent it to Elvis's last known management company, not expecting anything, not hoping for headlines, just doing it, because Evelyn needed to. And then, silence. 1 week. Nothing. 2 weeks. Nothing. A month passed. Then another. Sarah started watching her grandmother more closely. Evelyn kept smiling, kept playing, but there was a flicker of something behind her eyes. A tiny ache. Not regret. Evelyn didn't believe in that. But waiting. And waiting is hardest when you've already waited your whole life. The sun was setting when it happened. Sarah was stuck in traffic, running late for dinner. Evelyn was home, alone, sitting at her piano again, playing that same melody, slowly, softly, like she was speaking to the walls, to the air, to something beyond the room. And then, the phone rang. She answered with her usual, "Hello, dear." A pause, then a voice. "Is this Mrs. Evelyn Thompson?" "Yes, it is. This is Joe Esposito. I work with Mr. Elvis Presley." Evelyn almost dropped the phone. Joe explained everything, how someone on the team had found the package, how they'd played the song on a whim, how Elvis had walked in while it was playing and stayed, not just for the first verse, not just for the chorus, but for the whole song. And then he asked to hear it again, and again, and again. "He's been listening to it non-stop, Mrs. Thompson. He says it speaks to him. He's going through a hard time lately. And this song, it's really touched him." Evelyn didn't speak right away. Her throat tightened. "Mr. Presley would like to invite you to his concert next week," Joe continued. "He wants you in the front row, as his guest." There was silence. "And he'd like to perform your song that night, live, for the first time, in front of 12,000 people." Still silence. Joe checked the line. "Mrs. Thompson," Evelyn finally whispered. "Young man, are you telling me Elvis Presley is going to sing my song?" "Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what I'm telling you." Evelyn took a long breath, then smiled so wide, her face lit up like a sunrise. "Tell Mr. Presley this. He gave me music for 20 years. I just gave a little back." That night, Sarah walked in to find Evelyn at the piano, not just playing, but glowing. The song filled the room like it had been waiting for this moment. And when Evelyn told her the news, Sarah didn't believe it at first. "Grandma, are you serious?" Evelyn nodded, calm, graceful, like she already knew it was coming. The days that followed were a blur, a whirlwind of plans, phone calls, outfits, and disbelief. But Evelyn stayed grounded, quiet, composed. When Sarah asked if she was nervous, Evelyn just said, "No, because this isn't about me. It's about finishing something I started a long time ago." She wasn't chasing fame. She wasn't overwhelmed by the spotlight. She was simply ready to give something back to the man who had unknowingly walked with her through the loneliest chapters of her life. And now, that chapter was about to end. Not with silence, but with a song. The night of the concert arrived, and Memphis felt electric. Even the air seemed to buzz with something more than humidity. This wasn't just another Elvis show, not tonight. Evelyn wore a soft blue silk dress she hadn't touched since her grandson's wedding. Sarah helped her with her hair, carefully pinning the curls, just the way Evelyn liked them when she was young. A touch of powder, a pair of pearl earrings, and a quiet glow behind her eyes. Sarah, on the other hand, was all nerves. She kept checking her watch, adjusting her blazer, fidgeting with the invitation in her hand. But Evelyn, calm as ever, like she'd done this 100 times before. Their car pulled up to the Mid-South Coliseum. Crowds surrounded the venue, flashbulbs, chatter, excitement. But as Evelyn stepped out of the car, people turned, not in confusion, in awe. A tiny woman with decades in her bones, walking toward a moment few people ever get to live. Backstage, the room was buzzing with production crew and musicians. But when Evelyn entered Elvis's dressing room, the noise seemed to vanish. He stood as soon as she stepped in. No grand gesture, no celebrity swagger, just a quiet man in a white jumpsuit with a smile that looked like it hadn't been worn in a while. "Mrs. Thompson," he said gently, walking over to take her hands in his. "I don't know if you wrote this song for me, but I needed it." Evelyn looked up at him, barely 5 feet tall, and smiled with the kind of love only a 97-year-old can offer. "And I don't know if you were meant to hear it, but I hoped you would." They talked for just a few minutes, about music, life, loss. Elvis asked about her piano, her marriage, her favorite song of his. And then, with a soft touch to her shoulder, he whispered, "I'm going to do this right." Out front, the arena filled with over 12,000 people. The lights dimmed. The roar of the crowd rose, and then fell as Elvis walked onto the stage. He opened with the classics: Suspicious Minds, Love Me Tender, Jailhouse Rock. The crowd was on fire, but even through the flash of cameras and sea of cheers, he kept looking down at one face in the front row, Evelyn, calm, beaming, hands folded in her lap. Halfway through the set, Elvis paused. The band quieted, and he stepped to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice deep and full, "tonight I want to share something personal." The crowd fell silent. "A few weeks ago, I received a song. It came from a remarkable woman named Evelyn Thompson, who's sitting right there in the front row. She's 97 years old, and she's been listening to my music for over 20 years. Applause broke out. People stood. Cameras turned. Evelyn nodded, eyes wet but steady. "This song reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. It reminded me that dreams don't expire, and sometimes the most powerful songs don't come from studios, they come from living." He turned toward the grand piano at center stage, sat down, and began to play. No lights, no backup vocals, just Elvis, alone at the keys, singing Still Dreaming. His voice was soft at first, almost whispering. "I've seen nearly 100 years go by, watched dreams rise up and dreams say goodbye." And then the chorus, "Still dreaming, still believing, that music heals what words cannot say." The arena was still. You could hear people crying. When he reached the second verse, the part about fame and its weight, his voice cracked. "Fame's a gift, but not the final prize. The prize is in the love you harmonize." And in that moment, he looked at Evelyn, just for a second, but it felt like the whole world saw it. The exchange between two souls, different in every way, except for the music. When the song ended, there was no applause at first, just stunned silence, like people were holding their breath. Then, the arena erupted, the loudest, longest standing ovation of Elvis's career. And in the middle of it, he stood, walked to the edge of the stage, and reached down. With Sarah's help, Evelyn was lifted gently onto the platform. She stood beside Elvis, tiny, fragile, but proud, and he handed her the microphone. She looked out at 12,000 strangers, took a small breath, and said, "It's never too late to love, create, or believe." That was it. The crowd roared. People cried. Elvis clapped like he was the one in the audience. And for a moment, just a moment, it didn't matter who you were, how old you were, or what dream you'd set aside. Music had made everyone equal. The next morning, local news ran the story. By afternoon, it had hit the national circuit. By the end of the week, Evelyn Thompson was a household name. She did interviews, talked on morning shows, sat for magazine profiles with her piano in the background and a shy smile on her face. But she didn't let it get to her head. Every time someone asked if she ever imagined this would happen, she'd shrug and say, "I just wanted to say thank you." Elvis began performing Still Dreaming at every concert after that night. It became his quiet closer, a reminder to his fans, and maybe to himself, that music wasn't about fame, it was about connection. 4 months later, Elvis passed away, but the song lived on. Evelyn lived 3 more years. She turned 100, surrounded by family, with a birthday card from Graceland framed on the wall. She never stopped writing, never stopped playing. When she passed, her family donated all her songs, including the handwritten lyrics to Still Dreaming, to the Country Music Hall of Fame. Her piano now sits in a small room at Graceland. A plaque below it reads, "This piano belonged to Evelyn Thompson, who proved it's never too late to dream." Sarah went on to start a foundation in her grandmother's name. The Evelyn Thompson Foundation for Senior Creativity now funds artistic projects for older adults around the world. Their motto, "Tomorrow's just a song away," and it all started with one woman, one melody, and the courage to believe that her voice still mattered. If a 97-year-old woman can change someone's life with a single song, what's stopping you? What dream have you been holding back? Share this video with someone who thinks it's too late to start, too late to try, too late to hope. And remember Evelyn's words, "Tomorrow's just a song away."